This is Hannibal here from the HannibalTV.com, and I'm going to do a 420 review of this wonderful masked mutilator movie starring none other than Brick Brodsky, who I did an interview with recently. And that interview link can be found in the description, along with the link to the movie if you want to order it on YouTube Movies, which is where I actually ordered it for $3.99 because I do not have a Blu-ray player. So sadly, I was not able to watch all the extras. I'll explain to you why I like this movie so much. For one thing, I am a wrestling fan. And there's many wrestlers in this movie. The most famous, of course, is Brick Brodsky, who had some WWE matches, which we didn't even get to in the 3-hour interview I did with him. He was also a Stampede wrestler. And he was in Class of Nukem High 2 and 3, and Sergeant Kabuki Man, NYPD, and a bunch of other movies. Jeff Sibak, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, is the co-star of this, who had appearances in WCW and NWA. Doug Flex Yansky, who I do know him. He's had some ECW appearances, and I know I'm pronouncing your last name wrong. I'm sorry about that. James DeBello from Cabin Fever is also there. It was a great movie. And as I said, one, for the wrestling. Two, it was actually shot in 1994, even though it was just released in 2019. There are some more recent films, but as a guy that loves 80s horror movies like myself, I absolutely adore 80s horror movies. This has a very 80s horror movie feel to it because it was shot in 1994, and I guess some scenes were actually shot in 1996. There is some nudity in it, which is always a bonus. Various scenes of that. And it's about a group home. And a lot of you might not know this, but I actually worked in group homes for many years with severely violent people that had developmental disabilities. So I could very much identify with this. Actually, some of the people I worked with were actually characters out of horror movies. Very, very psychotic, very dangerous individuals that the only reason they weren't in prison was because of their developmental disabilities. So they were in group homes, which are similar to prisons, you could say. The movie is excellent for those reasons. And I'm biased. I will say this, I am biased because I am a fan of Brick Brodsky as an actor. I never knew who he was as a wrestler until like literally within the past year. I'd only heard about the famous Brian Pillman fight story, which, by the way, in a 3-hour interview, he never told the story. But it was entertaining nonetheless. It took him probably 2 hours to try and get the story out, but he kept getting sidetracked. There's a behind-the-scenes photo the director sent me of Brick and his co-star, Jeff, who was actually his tag team partner as well. I won't reveal to you who the masked mutilator actually was. This is the pool hall scene where Brick was also a director, and you can tell he was a wrestler because he's sporting that fanny pack. But yeah, I don't want to really reveal too much about the movie. The only thing that I kind of didn't like about it, and I know it was supposed to be cheesy, was the acting was actually like Brick Bronski is a good actor, and there were some other good actors in it. Not everyone was a great actor, but you would expect that from a bit of a B movie, you could call it. But one thing that I felt took away from the movie, because the storyline of the movie was good overall, was in some of the fight scenes they use like wrestling moves. Like there's chops in some of the fight scenes, for instance, and there's hip tosses. And it's like, to me, that took away from the heat of the moment, because it's like, oh, they're doing wrestling moves. These are a bunch of wrestlers. So it made me think back, like it was escaping from like the actual drama of it and reminding me that these guys are actual wrestlers in the movie, even though the Masked Mutilator obviously is a wrestler, and the guy that runs the group home, um, who is the guy played by Jeff, was an ex-wrestler as well. He was actually the Masked Mutilator. Now, the Masked Mutilator ex-wrestler might not necessarily be the killer. You'll have to watch the movie to find that out. But it was interesting because I could identify with it, and it was funny because at one point they're interviewing one of the ex-group home kids in one of the more recent scenes, and they were asking, like, did you find it unusual that a wrestler would be working in a group home? And he mentioned, no, it wasn't unusual because this was a violent place. And like in the group home I worked at, it was true. There was ex-football players, ex-wrestlers, people that trained in MMA, for the reason of you get attacked all the time. So you actually need big guys to control some of these individuals, because when they go off and they have almost superhuman strength, particularly the ones with disabilities. So I'm not going to say much more than that because I don't want to ruin the movie for people, but it was a great movie. Charles, yes, it was good. Darren, yeah, check it out. The link is in the description. I'll have to have Brick back on, and I will have Doug on just to talk about it. He played the cook in the group home, but he was also one of the group home attendants. But I did notice also from working in a group home that they actually got the atmosphere of a group home fairly good. They actually definitely got it fairly good. They're very high tension areas, and there's lots of strange stuff that happens. One thing that we didn't have at any group home I worked at that they had a room where they would lock the kids in if they got out of control, and it would be like a cell they would have to stay in the movie. That didn't exist in any of the places I worked at, although there were like some padded rooms that you could put the clients in if they were getting out of control. Someone checking in from Ireland, McEvoy Productions. It's 4:17 a.m. here. Almost 4:20. Almost 4:20, so I'll finish this. I am a creature of the night. I am a vampire. I don't like the daytime, to be perfectly honest with you. Watch The Masked Mutilator. I highly recommend it if you are an 80s horror movie fan or a wrestling fan. And I definitely think Brick Bronski, if he had actually continued on in wrestling, he would have been a big star because he had the look, and he's a better actor than Hulk Hogan, 100%. And at one point, his body you could say it was probably bigger than Hulk Hogan if you look at his time in Stampede. But if you look at his class of Newcomb High movies and stuff, he lost weight for acting. El Spicy works better at night too. I just don't like people, to be honest. I don't like being around people. I'd rather be up at night when I don't have to deal with people as much. Have a good evening. Have a good weekend.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews,